Okay, morning all, and thank you for joining us for this one of our world-class webcasts again at Visual. A common and regular thing for us to have these webcasts once a week, and I'm really pleased to be talking to you today around which I think is most anticipated in the marketplace around Skype for Business. We've got a lot of people on the webcast here from our customer base, and equally I've got a lot of people in this room with me. Just make some introductions, and then I'll just give you a little bit of insight to Visual as a business, and then we'll get into the meat of what we're here to talk about today, which is Skype for Business. So first and foremost, my name is Tim G. I'm one of the public sector sales managers here at Visual. I'm ex-Microsoft. I've been at Visual a couple of years, and I'm responsible not only for the public sector team, but working alongside our unified communications team around marketing and practice management. I'm joined in this room today by Ian Stretton, who's not on this list actually, but Ian's the practice manager for unified communications. He's sat next to me, and a couple of people in his team, Corey Goodchild and Martin Boehm, who are both senior consultants for us in the unified communications team. And on the remotely, we've got Brian Kane, who's from our business group, our business solutions group, and is one of our enterprise architects, and equally as well versed in Link as the other guys, who's been focusing on Link and Skype for Business for quite a long time. So we're going to be running this with a few presentations, but generally as a conversational or podcast today, rather than just speaking to a number of slides. Before we start, we would suggest there's a couple of things that I just wanted to step you through. We are going to be putting everybody on mute today, but there will be opportunities for you to ask questions. You can do that by just clicking on the Q&A tab that we have within the Link client, if you're in Link or Skype for Business client. Alternatively, you can send your questions into inquiries@risual.com. That's inquiries, obviously, at risual.com. We are recording this today, so obviously if you want to, that this will be posted on YouTube, but if you want to come back to it and refer to the content, you can do so. We'd be really pleased if you start to socialise the webcast and the podcast with some of your other colleagues as well. And obviously we do have the opportunity to open up the webcast at the end if you want to ask some questions directly, although there is quite a lot of people on this call, so we might need to be just careful that we don't have a bit of a melee. And so if you don't mind, I'm just going to quickly go through a couple of slides just around who Visual are and our standing in the marketplace before we get on to the meaty content around Skype for Business. So very quickly, Visual are a 100% focused Microsoft pure play partner. We don't do any other competitive solutions other than Microsoft, and we deal with most of the Microsoft workloads or product lines. We've been in existence for 10 years. This slide is slightly out of date because we've now got close to 110, 115 people in the team. We are very technically focused. The owners of the business are from a technical consultancy background, and we hold ourselves to account to deliver premium services. Our business is split across three business areas. First and foremost, we have a business group, and the business group is where Brian, who's sitting on the line, sits, and that includes our strategic consulting, our engagement management, our project management, and our architecture team. It's really important for us actually to note that, because the business group is one of our growing and most successful practices, and it was very deliberately put in place to lift our conversations from product-centric conversations to more transformational engagements, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second.
products, that's why.
We have dedicated consultants. These practices are essentially dealt with as businesses in their own right, carrying anything between £2.5 to £3 million services targets. The people that sit in those organisations we don't diversify their skill sets. So, for instance, in business productivity, we're talking there around Office 365 and SharePoint predominantly, and the people within that team will focus on those skills. Unified communications messaging, obviously, a number of people in the room with me today who sit in that practice. Again, Office 365, Link, Skype for Business, Exchange is the predominant skill sets in that team. Cloud infrastructure is an amalgamation of what was our systems management and cloud infrastructure and IAP, identity access and perimeter skill sets. So it deals with all things that are desktop and server related in terms of management and deployment. We also deal with things like Intune, Azure from the cloud, and deal with everything that can underpin the solutions that we put forward. And then our application development team is a fairly new team to Rizal. We've been working for the last 12 months around development on things like SharePoint and CRM, but we've launched the application development team this year to focus on those things in .NET development. We're doing some really great projects, particularly in public sector, around consolidation of an amalgamation of information to the point of service. Secondly then, from our services perspective, and as you would expect, anything that we plan and implement for you on the Microsoft platform, we are also very, very focused on helping to monitor, optimize and manage those services as they're being deployed and thereafter. And that can be anything from a full managed service, from proactive to reactive services and management, proactive connection with your servers to manage the uptime of those services and making sure that they are dealt with in the right way, or indeed whether it's on-premise or in the cloud. So that's our business, and that's where our services fit. So 100% Microsoft focused, 100% services focused. I talked about part of our business, particularly the business group, and the ability for us to lift up from the product-based propositions. And for us, this is a really, really powerful set of solutions, commoditized solutions that we've put together. And it does hold IT to account. And it works on the basis that any time we're asked for any kind of Microsoft product, then our account teams and our consultancy teams will be questioning and asking you how that technology is going to impact in a number of areas. How it's going to impact the way in which you engage with your customers or consumers. In public sector, that could be termed as citizens or patients or students. But understanding that engagement strategy, how you utilize technologies like CRM, BI, and workflow, and things like Skype for Business, Link, to engage with those individuals and service them correctly. If we know what that strategy is, then how do we empower your workforce to deal with that strategy? How do we, have a business productivity layer that, again, gives your users the ability to do flexible mobile working, gain access to insights, communicate and collaborate in a more fluid nature? And again, the topic of Skype for Business is absolutely embedded into that. And lastly, if we know what those two strategies are, then how do we have a strategy for your infrastructure and enhanced infrastructure operations and process strategy? And again, funnily enough, Skype for Business can have a big play in that. If you think about using Skype for Business to handle or triaging help desk calls or access to and taking over machine details and making changes. So the three propositions that we have and we will be talking to all of our customers about is optimized service vision, end-user computing, and connected business. But I hope you can see from that little explanation that first and foremost, for us, it's about kind of stepping away from the product solution initially and just holding that decision to account as to how it's going to help you enhance, empower, or engage in your IT strategy. And equally, as we talk about Skype for Business today, how Skype for Business and that collaborative communication workflow can have an impact on all those things. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Ian Stratton, who is the Unified Communications Practice Lead here. We're gonna have a couple of slides to work from, but the idea here is today is to ask a few questions of the people in the room, get some commentary as to what we're seeing in the marketplace, either pre-release or release on the business, and give you some insight to what you can expect. Ian?
Okay, thank you, Tim. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining the webcast. I can see we've got a really good attendance, so thank you, everybody, for making the time to join us this morning. So what we're going to do is keep this hopefully quite light and airy. Obviously, some of the information that we've got here is kind of being released from Microsoft, so we're kind of giving you this as we find out ourselves, and as we kind of work with Microsoft very closely in that working relationship that we have with them. So the way we're going to work it is I'm going to try and ask a few kind of poignant questions, and the kind of questions that hopefully all of our customers have kind of got on their lips to the consultants that are then hopefully going to answer those questions and then provoke some discussion. As we go through, quite happy to take some questions from you. If you've got the Q&A tab, if you're all logged in via link, if you want to post your questions that way, we can capture those, and hopefully if they are questions that I can ask at the relevant time, I will do, and we'll try to do that and answer everything we can on the webcast. If not, then obviously what we'll do is we'll capture those questions and then we'll come back and answer them directly to you later on. So without further ado, first question, and I'm going to fire this one over to Brian as to so what is Skype for Business?
That's a very, very good question. So I think, Skype for Business really is an evolution of the Link product. So, Link 2013, in terms of its standing in the market, and the way that it was positioned, obviously gained a really good position in the marketplace. Looking at the latest Gartner reports, it was placed top of all of the UC offerings that are out in the marketplace there. So really, it's about an evolution of that product to produce better functionality, increased functionality, and also to try and increase adoption and make it even more relevant in people's organizations today. So really, in terms of the capabilities, obviously we've got all the same capabilities that we used to have in Link, in terms of the users and the administrators and that sort of thing. So we've still got instant messaging and all those sorts of things. We've still got web conferencing capabilities, and we've still got all of the enterprise telephony capabilities. But I think it's fair to say that a lot of those capabilities have either been enhanced or increased in terms of functionality. So the UI, so the user interface, that's kind of been a little bit, I would say, rebranded. So for those people who are familiar with Skype experience, will find themselves quite at home with the Skype for Business product. But equally, a lot of the features and the functionalities that enterprises expect that were not traditionally available in the consumer-based Skype product are still there. They were there in Link, and they're still there in Skype for Business. So in terms of security and enterprise functionality, then all of those things are all still there. So that's a really good. That's a good thing to know. Yep.
So I was just going to say, so there's a lot of, maybe I'm misreading the community out there, but maybe there's a few people saying, oh, it's just a rebranding exercise from Microsoft. From what we understand, that's not really the case, is it, at the end of the day? There's lots of features that will be coming as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just a rebranding, although it's fair to say that, there is a rebranding exercise going on there. Obviously, Link as a brand is stopping with this version of the product. And we're now moving to a Skype for Business world, so we're all going to get tripped up on all of our conversations when we start talking about Link, and we say, no, sorry, I mean Skype for Business. That's going to happen all the time for a little while to come, I think. So there is a rebranding going on, but yeah, you're right. There's absolutely some new features and some new capabilities in the product that have been developed and that are only available in the Skype for Business product, whether that be online or on-premise or as a hybrid deployment. So there are certainly some new features involved, and I think they're quite important from a business perspective as well. So the capabilities that are now available in the product are going to add some business value, and that's really important to bring out. It's not just sort of new toys for users to play with. It's about, Microsoft announced this universal communications vision, where, Lync at the time and Skype for Business going forward is going to be at the center, the central hub for all of your business communications. Whether that be, integrating into video conferencing capabilities or, reaching out to public communications providers such as Skype, those kinds of things are all capable within the Skype for Business product set. So yeah.
Brian, it's Tim here. It's interesting we talk about the branding, isn't it? Because I think it's very, very clever branding. It's a very clever move by Microsoft here. It would have been easier for the kind of technical community and the enterprise community to call this Lync rather than Skype, right? Mm-hmm. And have that transition into the consumer market. But they've made a conscious decision here to move from the consumer end and rename the enterprise piece of that. I think there's a lot of subtleties in that messaging from Microsoft in terms of, and I'm sure everybody on the line heard the term around consumerization of IT, how IT is being affected in the enterprise by the way that we work at home. And I think there's some very subtle and clever messaging in here which will drive greater amounts of technology adoption in the workplace because they're branding it as from a consumer background.
Yeah.
And I think the reason I'm mentioning that is because I can, looking at the people that we've got online at the moment, all essentially from an enterprise, maybe an IT function. And it's worth noting that we're seeing as an organisation this consumerisation IT, the changing or demands of IT in the workspace based on what people are doing at home. It's very subtle, but it's very strong.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things that I'm seeing. It's coming loud and clear is that users in the enterprise or within a university or any of these large organisations, it's users that are driving the change within IT, and that's driven by business requirements. I want to be able to reach out to the people that I'm serving, my customers or my students or whoever it is, or my citizens. I want to reach out to those people and I want to provide them with the services that they expect of my organisation, but in new ways and in more modern ways, that they want to consume those services.
You're absolutely right. I've seen it a lot in public sector, and there was a lot of commentary over the last 6 months around telehealth and telecare, potentially in the NHS, and a lot of people demanding they want a Skype experience.
Yep.
So I think it's very subtle, but I think it's very strong, this rebranding, and the underpinning notion of consumers affecting IT in the workplace is something that you've just said we're coming across all the time.
I think also often when explaining about what Lync is to my wife and to my family, that often I describe it as Skype for Business. So that name,
everybody knows the Skype brand, don't they?
Yeah. And it's that name that is important.
Yeah.
Often people are unsure unless they have it in the enterprise what Lync is and what it does, but rebranding it Skype for Business, it's only going to make that name bigger.
Yeah. So as I say, as we touched on before, the key is as well, it's not just a rebranding exercise, there is some definite functionality improvements that are as well. So just on the slide there, Brian, so we've got a couple of security and compliance controls and features as well.
Yeah, that's it. So, like I mentioned, really, they're all still in the product. So we've still got encryption of media that's been sent over the network. We've got controls and checks in place as to who can administer the environment and preventing people from making changes and that sort of thing. All the kinds of, like you say, the security, the compliance, and the controls that enterprises just expect of their enterprise-grade applications, and that we're all there within Lync, will all absolutely be here in Skype for Business as well. This, in terms of the security of the product, it's exactly the same as it was with Lync. So we've got much more. We've got all of that control that we need in terms of your communication platform.
We've had a first question through, guys, here. So, and the question is, because it's called Skype, there is an expectation in the user community that it will seamlessly talk to the consumer Skype straight away. To what extent is is this actually the case, or will you cover this later?
So the good
Yeah.
news is that
Will we cover this later?
Really, yeah.
Okay, good
So
stuff.
come on to that one.
Good stuff.
I think, in just talking about security and compliance there, lots of organisations absolutely do not want the Skype community to suddenly start flooding into their this called Skype for Business environment, so just because I've got Skype for Business, am I now opening myself up to, millions, literally millions of users within the Skype community? And that's not the case, all right? You can do that if you want to, but it's a conscious choice by the organisation and by the user individually to say, yes, I want that to happen, or I want that to happen with these particular individuals, who happen to be on the Skype community, but you're not necessarily opening yourself up to millions of people then suddenly being able to flood your environment. That's not the case, all right? So when we come back to Skype, Skype for Business security and control features, we've got all of those built in exactly the same way as we did with Link, and they're still here with Skype for Business. Okay, so we've got that control if we want it, and we can build that into the deployment.
So with that in mind, then we'll move on to the next question. So are there any changes to the architecture? Is there any new roles, new features, anything like that from the back end that's going to be coming?
Yeah, so I guess with the evolution of Link, there's the evolution of new features on the server side, and also that will affect the client. So there is 2 new server roles in particular that have been added to Skype for Business, and that includes the video interoperability server, so that's known as the VIS, and the call quality dashboard, the CQD. So if we just talk about the video interoperability server, so this is just part of Skype for Business. This is a new role that has just come, so it isn't part of Link. It's a solution that's been put in really that often integration with existing on-premise video conferencing equipment has often been troublesome. There's a requirement for third-party gateways, additional investments to make existing VC equipment compatible with Link as it was. Now, Skype for Business has taken that so that they have included this role. It's a standalone role that can be deployed. At the moment, it is focused solely on Cisco and Tamberg. It is expected that will expand. And really, it's allowing you to leverage existing video conferencing equipment that you've got already and add Skype for Business clients into those video conferences.
I think that's a really good and really important server role, isn't it? Because traditionally, organisations have made investments in video conferencing capabilities, and when you come along with Link in the past and Skype for Business in the future, they don't necessarily want to throw all of that kit out, do they? They've made a big investment there. They want to get as much out of that as they possibly can, and so the Viz server role is going to allow us to connect in our new platform, the possibly platform of the future, and then still use all of that existing kit and use that in a productive way.
Yeah, so I see that, particularly if there isn't a heavy investment there, that would be a key role, and that can be deployed as standalone, or you can add high availability in there as well. So that is a really good role coming forward, and I think that's only going to grow. So we'll just touch, so on the call quality dashboard, so Link had the monitoring reports that give you some good insight into what's going on in Link, how people are using it. Now, there was some work, there is a call quality methodology, so okay, we know how many calls are going on in Link, but do we know how many are of good quality? And do we know and have any way to see this in terms of graphs, trends? Now, the call quality dashboard has added this in, and this leveraging SQL analysis server role. So with that, you can take all the information that was previously done with the call quality methodology, which is collecting statistics from the QoE database. It was very manual, and it took you quite some time to do that. So for Skype for Business, they brought this role in now. That you can, it takes all the data out of QoE, leverages SQL analysis services, and gives you a really good graph, good insight into the environment.
I think one thing that's important with the call quality dashboard as well is the fact that in the past, the monitoring reports you have to have some level of technical knowledge to kind of understand what those reports are telling you. So the combination of packet loss, jitter, and things like that are all impacting audio and video calls. Now, what the call quality dashboard is going to do, it's going to provide those non-technical staff that insight into the quality of the calls that are taking place on the network at the moment. So from my perspective, it's definitely a key investment that's been brought in based on what clients have been asking for.
Okay. So just to wrap that little bit up then around the roles then. So we've still got the front-end servers, still got edge servers.
So no roles have been removed. Only these two
added.
Been added for Skype for Business. So if you are using the mediation server, standalone mediation server role, or edge server role, they're all still there.
We're still going to have multi-role servers as well, so like the standard edition where it kind of...
Yeah, so standard edition, enterprise edition, at the front-end servers, those roles are still there. You can co-locate specific roles depending on the requirements. So these two are evolutionary changes really. They've added 2 roles into it now.
Cool. So back office as well, we've got SQL, we've got it on slide here, SQL always on.
So one question often asked is, does Link support SQL always on? Now Link doesn't, it's not supported. Skype for Business has taken that and they have worked on supporting SQL always on. It may be that customers have a standard for high availability of SQL, and they've at the moment the recommended method was SQL mirroring. So SQL mirroring is being depreciated. Now Microsoft, there is no date from the SQL server team to when that would be depreciated, but it is known that SQL mirroring is being depreciated and would be replaced with SQL always on. So SQL always on gives you advantages that you can have a primary, secondary and failover SQL servers. So it gives you increased high availability over SQL mirroring as well. So it is the next generation of database mirroring technology. The databases are across all the servers. It is known to be kind of more reliable than SQL mirroring, and really allows you to take advantage of that new SQL high availability. There is a few key things to note on that Skype for Business supportability is that the SQL always on servers must be at the same site, and that there are a few architecture things to consider when deploying SQL always on for Skype for Business to make sure it's supported. So from looking at the upgrade process for Skype for Business has taken this, and I think with other, it's a Microsoft vision of using in-place upgrades. So it is leveraging the existing hardware that you've got. It's not having to deploy separate servers side by side, which was how it was in Link migrations from 2010 to 2013. Customers would often have to buy more hardware to support the servers that you're going to migrate to the newer version.
They used to have this back in the day, back in my good old days on Exchange 4.5 and 5.5, it was always do an in-place upgrade and just upgrade the software. So they're looking to go back to that model. By the looks of it, and certainly it's the same with Exchange. It's by the looks of it with Link and Skype now as well, where you can they're islands of servers these days.
I think this is one of the things that's absolutely brand new to this product. We've never seen this before. So I've been working with this technology since the live communication server, and always the upgrade path has always been a side-by-side installation and then a migration of the users and then decommission the old platform. So this is something it's brand new. It's not something that's happened in the past, and so it'd be interesting to get an understanding as to why someone might want to do this. And what implications it's going to have in terms of upgrades. It'd be interesting to find out how many customers actually want to do this and for what reasons.
I think it's also equally important to point out, just to stress Martin's point there, that it's an in-place upgrade of the hardware. So dependent upon the approach that you take to the in-place upgrade, there could still be potential downtime for those end users that are actually consuming the service. So there's in summary, to maintain that service availability during business hours to customers, there is still a requirement to spin up a second pool and move those users while you perform the in-place upgrade on the existing hardware to the Link 2013 pieces. But in terms of the actual, like the guy's saying, it's brand new to the product, and it's the first iteration of the in-place upgrade introduced to Link. So just wanted to point that out.
Fine. Yeah. Okay. So I think we sort of talked about there, a little touched on by deployment as well.
So the deployment, in terms of the in-place upgrade process, that has been greatly simplified from where it was side by side. So again, it's an evolutionary change in the product. It's moving forward. So in terms of the deployment, the in-place upgrade has pre-rec checks to make sure that you are at a stage ready for the upgrade process, and that includes the smart setup. So previously with Link, you would get the media, from the media install the RTM version, then update with cumulative updates. So again, that was a timely process to get a Link server at the latest cumulative update. So that's been improved. So the setup process will actually do that for you. It will go and get the cumulative updates, and also the server patching process has been greatly improved. That often particularly with the Enterprise Edition pull, with a number of servers, 3 being the recommended, the patching process was time consuming, and the Link and Skype for Business product team have taken that forward to simplify that process so that servers can be taken in and out of the quorum, patched, brought back in. So there is some new management shell commands, particularly for patching, to speed up that process. And I think with a 12 node front end pool, Microsoft was saying it's gone down to now 2 to 3 hours rather than over 12. So it is a considerably time consuming. And again, it's taken feedback. Product group have looked at this and taken it forward. So another new feature, which I think is a really good feature now, is server-side conversation history. So conversation history is in Link. So conversation history is stored in your mailbox. But what often, particularly when using the Link mobile client, conversation history from the mobile client would be separate. You wouldn't have it saved. You'd have quite a disjointed experience. So server-side conversation history has taken that now. It's taken it from Skype that you can use any device, continue that conversation on whatever device you're using, and it will be saved throughout all devices using Skype for Business. One key thing on that is there is a requirement for Exchange 2013 for this feature, or Exchange Online. But I see that being a really good feature that I think people have noticed, that kind of disjointed conversation history feature.
I think that it also sort of shows that it's expected that users would sort of roam between devices. The idea of a user just using a single device during a day is kind of it's going away now. It's expected that users are going to be using multiple devices, and they just want to have exactly the same experience across all of those devices, and to be able to continue conversations as they roam between devices.
Yeah. So I see that being a really good feature in there.
Just on the mobile client as well, one other very welcomed introduction feature that we're going to see is an increased auto accept time. So a lot of clients have been complaining about not having enough time to accept an instant message incoming on a mobile device, and then the sending party pretty much sees a spinning circle in their conversation window, and there's no acknowledgement as to whether that instant message is being accepted. Now with the Skype for Business mobile client, they're going to increase that timeout. So basically, we're going to see less dropped conversations and more fluent conversations that take place over multiple devices. So it complements the server-side conversation history pretty nicely.
Cool. So another one, response groups. So response groups, as we know at the moment, there's an increase in the scalability, so they can be much larger than they used to be and supported with Link. There's at the moment nothing around any other changes apart from scalability for response groups. And I think one key thing, particularly with the upgrade process within place, is that there is some improvements for failover, leveraging Windows Fabric. And that's something that Link and Skype for Business runs on in terms of failover. One key thing there is to note that to leverage the improvements in Windows Fabric, it's only available in version 3 of Windows Fabric, and that is only available in Windows Server 2012 or 2012 R2. So if you are using Link on Windows Server 2008 R2 and are thinking of the in-place upgrade feature, you won't be able to leverage those new failover capabilities of Windows Fabric in terms of performance. So it is a key thing just to consider. The recommended operating system for Skype for Business Server is Windows Server 2012 R2, so the latest and greatest, really.
So, quick question from the audience is, if you've virtualized your link infrastructure, if we upgrade to Skype for Business, is live migration supported? I think it's early days at the moment. We still don't have full information, but our gut feel at the moment is probably not.
I would say no. I would say that the
there hasn't been
disaster recovery should be leveraged within Skype for Business in the product itself. So for disaster recovery, it would be having two front-end pools, paired pooling. For high availability, it will be Enterprise Edition front-end server pools, etc. So I don't think that instance will change.
I think it's worth clarifying, just covering all the bases on that question as well, because live migration in terms of Link 2013 wasn't supported on a live Link server. But it was always possible to drain a Link 2013 server so that it effectively wasn't hosting any active sessions, and then live migrate it to another host if you wanted, for example, to patch the host. You can absolutely do that. So you can move VMs around as long as they weren't running a live Link service. So like you say, we haven't heard anything new or anything different in that respect. So we can only assume that it's going to be the same. But certainly migrating a live Link server that's running services, has active connections, is not supported.
Okay, cool. So on to the next question then. So Office 365 and Link Online. So what changes are we seeing coming in there, Corey?
So over the past 18 months, I think it's fair to say that we've seen a rapid growth of adoption for 365. That's not only from a user growth perspective, but also from a functionality perspective as well. So, pretty much week in, week out, we're seeing updates being rolled out, whether they're subtle updates or major updates, but we are seeing functionality being improved on a weekly, monthly basis with Office 365. Now, just as it stands at the moment, we do have the IM presence, we've got the conferencing, web conferencing, audio and video available in 365. The only exception to in comparison to Skype for Business on-premise, the only difference that we don't have at the moment is the enterprise voice. Now, as it stands, we can leverage third-party audio conferencing providers to enable the dial-in conferencing side of things, but that still doesn't account for DDIs, dial tone, and pretty much that enterprise voice functionality. So a recent announcement was made, and that being enterprise voice is coming to Skype for Business Online. It's going to start off. It's going to start off about the ground rumble then. With US trials, so late summer, we're going to start to see it trickle out to US customers, and then a global rollout thereafter. But I think it's in one point I'd like to stress on this, that it's important to point out that to begin with, it's going to be basic core control functionality. And when I say that, what I mean by that is we're going to be able to place a call. We're going to be able to make a call, place a call, receive a call, place a call on hold, and transfer a call. But it would be safe to assume that we won't have much more functionality above that in the initial instance. And the way that we're going to approach that is it's just through the leveraging of Azure Express route. So Microsoft recently announced that Office 365 is going to be opened up to Azure Express route. So not only can you now leverage the compute power in Office 365 and the storage, etc., from OneDrive for Business, but we can now leverage a managed connection to that connectivity. So the biggest pain point for 365 customers at the moment is the fact that all communication is taking place over the internet, which is an unmanaged network. Now, with things like Azure Express route, we can actually spin up a private connection into the 365 data centers and leverage that compute power and that resource that Microsoft have got without having to make the investment and build our own Microsoft data center that's capable of hosting, I think it was 2 jumbo jets. So yeah, that was one of the more major announcements. So in summary, enterprise voice coming to 365 initially in very basic basic capabilities and to the US only, with a view to say 2016 and thereafter for a global, strong international rollout. And then on top of that, we're also going to see through 365 and Skype for Business on premise, we're also going to see an increased use of hybrid connectivity. So in the past, we've been leveraging hybrid connectivity from a Skype for Business perspective for split domains. So customers may want to home some users in the cloud, home some users on premise, and let's say, for example, to deliver on-premise voice to some users, whereas other business units that don't require enterprise voice, for example, let's home them in the cloud from a cost-saving perspective. But now what we're going to see is as more and more features come to Skype for Business, they actually are going to leverage things like the Azure network and Skype for Business Online. So we are going to definitely see an increase in popularity of hybrid connectivity and hybrid deployments. And then finally, just sorry, yeah, go on, Brian.
Sorry, yeah, the enterprise voice experience that we're expecting, first of all, I guess it's going to be a like a Skype experience, yeah. So the kinds of functionalities that you can do in the consumer product at the moment, I guess it's going to be that kind of experience that you're going to have initially for the Skype for Business from Office 365 products. So you'll be able to, like say, make a call out to the PSTN and probably receive a call in from the PSTN. So you'll have a telephone number that relates to you as an individual, so like a DDI as they're known. So we'll be some of those, and we'll be able to sort of make and receive calls out to the PSTN from Office 365. Yeah.
Yeah, and then just on Brian's point, as we see the platform mature that little bit more, we'll start to see things like E911 services coming into the US. We'll start to see things like simultaneous ring call forwarding being introduced to the Link client. We'll also start to see things like response groups. So think about scaling out your response groups in the cloud on leveraging Skype for Business Online. All of that functionality is expected to come, but as Brian says, in the initial instance, it is going to be very basic call control. So can I make a call? Can I take a call? Let's put that call on hold. Let's transfer that call, and maybe a few features in between those as well.
So I guess from a business's perspective, then, if depending on what their telephony requirements are, that's going to help make the decision as to whether they should think about deploying Skype for Business, within the next 6 months, or if maybe they might want to wait and think about just moving straight to Office 365. That's going to be one of the key decision points, isn't it, really, as to what they want to do.
Definitely, it'd be a wise decision to keep Skype for Business Online planning in your planning on your planning radar for the time being. Actually, considering the timing of the announcement, and like I said to my earlier point, the rapid increase of features that have been introduced to 365. I can't see this taking long before it really takes off.
Absolutely.
Just that last point on the slide as well. So from one of the another pain point that we've had with Skype integration when it's been working is the fact that we've been limited to MSN, Outlook, and Hotmail accounts for that integration. Now what we're going to be able to do is basically leverage the entire Skype directory. So from our Link client, from our Skype for Business client, sorry.
You were the first.
So from the Skype for Business client, we're going to now be able to just tap into that huge Skype directory. So like Brian said, we're still going to have the security and we're still going to have the control about who we talk to from the Skype for Business world, from the Skype consumer world. So it's not going to be a case of opening the floodgates. But yes, we are now not only limited to Microsoft accounts, MSN accounts, and Hotmail accounts. We can add and search based on native Skype IDs.
I think that's quite a major point. I mean, obviously on the slide here we've got cheaper call costs, but when you look at that in reality, it's another way of being able to connect with your consumers.
Yeah.
And if a consumer can save the cost of a call rather than calling an 0845 or an 0800345 number, which is a local call rate. Now they could call over Skype and connect in, or you can call them over Skype and connect in with those consumers. I think it's just.
You're absolutely right, and it's also about the availability of your services as an organisation. If you think about somebody who's visiting your website as an example, there's nothing to stop you from putting a little widget on your website that says click here if you want to talk to somebody. Let's just say you're a council and you've got a planning department as an example. People go to the council website and there's a little button that says speak to a planning advisor now. Click on the little button, fires open Skype, and then immediately you're having a conversation with a guy who's in the planning department that you want to talk to. It's about having these kinds of services available and accessible by members of the public, whether they be citizens, students, customers, whatever it is. You can make all of those services highly available through your website, literally at the click of a button, and then someone gets straight into the person that they want to speak to.
Right. And so on to the next one then. So is there a new client then in that case? I think that's what most people are seeing at the moment, isn't it? So the new experience.
Yeah. So there is a new client. So the new client is Skype for Business. So there is a new look and feel. We've taken that look and feel of the Skype consumer product and brought it into Skype for Business. So it's giving you that similar user experience, and it is including some nice Skype animated emotions, emojis. Yeah, which from Link, Link's had emojis in it for a while. They did get updated with, I think, Office 2013 Service Pack 1. There was a bit of an outrage when they changed. And now we're bringing in Skype animated emotions and also the sounds. We're taking that look and feel of the Skype product, bringing it into the enterprise, but also bringing new features. And there's some awesome features. One thing that I do love is the new alerting option. So, I can have my toast pop up on a different screen, in a different place, whether it's bottom left, top right, which, a little thing makes big differences. And I think one of the really good ones is the call monitor.
Yeah.
I think that has come from Skype. Often you're in a call, you'll minimise that conversation window if you're working on something together, you're discussing, and also often call transfers, you'd have to go back into Link, into the conversation window, and it took a little bit of time. Now they've brought in this call monitor that sits always on top, and it gives you that option, gives you the call controls. At the moment that is mute and hang up, but it gives you that experience that's on the top. But for video, it brings the video on top, so you can still see the person whilst you're working on something, which was something that wasn't in Link, and that is for Skype for Business. And they're taken to improving the look and feel of the client, and that includes the call controls. Call transfers was often a long process that customers were not keen on. Skype for Business has taken that to make that much more an efficient process, so you can do that much quicker. There is a rate my call option as well, so you can give feedback to your administrators. As we spoke about earlier, the integrated Skype directory. So if you do apply and get federated with Skype, the consumer, then that is integrated into the client. So when you contact, you will see a Skype directory option. And a new feature that has come is call via work. So that's really allowing the Skype for Business server to make that call for you and connect that other endpoint. And that's really looking at replacing remote call control that is in Link. So remote call control has been a method which has been quite troublesome to install. Takes quite a lot of prerequisites, hardware to look at trying to get Link to operate your desk phone, particularly in some environments. So Skype for Business has taken that. They've replaced that option that you should use call via work now, which is a new feature in the call forwarding options that you should look at. One key thing just to note there is that Skype for Business, they have depreciated remote call control. So if you are using that, the Skype for Business client cannot use RCC. But you can use Skype for Business server, and there is a Link UI for Skype for Business server based. And that client is changeable via a policy. So moving forward, Skype for Business will look, and we recommend to look at utilising call via work.
Yeah, we have had one question in there about the new client upgrade process. So again, just to enhance Martin's point, there is going to be client policies that we can control the rollout of the client. So basically, we can deploy the new client UI to a subset of business units, departments, etc. for those that are maybe more adaptable to change, etc. And then we can roll it out to the more cultural users at a more defined pace for us. So it is all policy driven, and administrators can control who gets the client and when they get the client.
Go on, sorry, Brian.
Yeah, I was going to say it's fair to say that just like in the previous version of the product, we can do the client first and then the server. So we can upgrade the client and then upgrade the server, or you can upgrade the server and then upgrade the client. So that option is still open, and we do whatever's necessary, but we've got a new option with the Skype for Business client in that we can actually deploy the new client to the endpoint, but make it look like the old client. And that's this registry switch that we've got, so that users can actually start to use the new client but still have the old look and feel. And then at the point in time that you're ready, you can now say, right, click your fingers, and then everybody moves across to the new Skype UI. So it just gives us some more options in terms of deployment and obviously take up as well.
There's also a question that's come in about the Windows mobile client as well, to allow it to run properly in the background. So I think it's fair to say there's not a lot of information that's come out on the mobile. I think that's probably still under a lot of development still. But
yeah, there isn't. I don't think I know we don't know as yet to fully answer that question. I would expect there to be development in the mobile client, particularly with the server-side conversation history.
Absolutely.
And I think that item, we would hope to see that come forward.
Yeah, and I think obviously with Windows 10 as well coming out, that's going to have
universal apps,
different outcome as well. So we'll come back and answer that one. So we've actually got a quick demo. It might very well be a very quick demo at this time, but I can show some of the look and feel of the new client as well. So let me just present my desktop.
Just while you're in, it's probably worth mentioning there that anybody can download the technical preview of the Skype for Business client. You can do that now. You can run it against your Link 2013 platform, and so you can start to get used to the new look and feel of the client. And still run it against your Link backend so you can evaluate it, that sort of thing. You don't get all of the new features because some features require both the client and the server, but you'll certainly start to get the look and feel, and you'll start to get some of the new client-based features. So it's certainly worthwhile doing that and having a look if you've got a mind to be thinking about upgrading at some point in the near future.
Yeah, and if you look at the contact list, similar to Skype now, the icons.
Yeah, so they're very round. You've got your little jelly bean rather than a line. It's now a bit more interactive, so you've kind of got a clock. And
one of the most significant feature updates as well that we see with the client is the fact that there's no more hovering over conversation windows. So if you bring up a conversation window, Ian, we actually now have to click on the modalities. So if you click on Start an IM with Brian, for example, now at the bottom of the window, one of the biggest annoyances that we've found that clients have had is the fact that when they hover the mouse over the conversation window, all sorts of menus and alerts have popped up. Now, if you hover over the audio section, for example, we're no longer seeing the additional options that are under that audio call button. So, for example, if you hover over the presentation area, you'll see that there's no longer the intrusive pop-up that appears above the conversation window. You actually now have to click on the button for it to display the options that are under there. So that's one of the more subtle features that's found its way into the client that's very welcomed.
It's worthwhile just explaining why that is, and obviously that's because we're moving now towards a much more touch-based UI. You can't hover if you're on a tablet device. Hovering doesn't work.
I think from the menus, they've made fewer menus, flatten the task hierarchy that moving through there.
Sorry, this one.
So where you were just on the so there's fewer menu options that used to be there, but so whiteboarding, polling is not there. If you click on more,
it's all still there. It's just hidden away a little bit more.
So again, taking that look and feel of Skype, really. Do you want to give everybody a quick hover over the emotions?
You have to.
Once we go for
show the bandit.
Bandit one.
Mate. The things that techies get excited about, eh?
I think the chat text is now in bubbles. If you send messages, a message within 60 seconds, it puts it into one.
Yeah.
So
much more familiar interface for Skype at the end of the day.
Okay, so is there anything? I don't think there's any really other key points on that interface. Obviously, what we'd probably say is
it's a very quick look at the client, isn't it? At the end of the day, there's some features that are only part of, like such as the call monitor. You can only do that when you're in a call and when you're not presenting on a webcast like this, because it doesn't pop up then. But when you're on a call, you'll see that call monitor, and you'll be able to use that. I found it really useful. Just because you guarantee you'll be on a conference call and you've probably got yourself on mute because you're busy doing other things, multitasking as we do. And then suddenly someone will ask you a question and you've got to go looking for the window, and you've got to try and open all these windows and find the call window and then unmute yourself. It's not like that with Skype for Business. It's just right there. It's always on top. You just unmute really quickly and it's dead easy to use.
Yeah, you often have a fight to hang up sometimes as well when you both got the conversation windows closed.
Yeah.
So just to bring it back to the presentation, obviously that was a very, very quick demo of the client. Obviously, if anybody wants anything a bit more, happy to come and show you that, not a problem at all. If you'd like to download your own technical preview, we'd like you to come to the Visual blogs. If you go onto there, do a quick search for Skype, and then we've posted an article up there with the links to go and get that technical preview. So that will hopefully help you find it a little bit quicker if you go to the Visual blogs. All right, so just onto just got our last couple of slides to come through. So I think we touched on it all the way through really as well, which was as to what the upgrade options are and how we could go about it. So Brian, I think you've obviously touched on a few things there about side-by-side installs.
In place.
So we've got options there around sort of an in-place upgrade, where like we say, we upgrade the existing hardware and the existing operating system and the existing deployment of Link 2013 or Link 2010. You can do either. So we can do that upgrade in place and then move straight to Skype for Business. The thing you need to be careful of is there's no sort of tri-platform supportability here. So you need to be either on Link 2010 or on Link 2013. If you've got any environments that have got both 2010 and 2013 running, then you need to get to one platform before you can then upgrade to Skype for Business. So that's the consideration. Or in these days of sort of throwaway hardware like we've got with virtualization platforms, the side-by-side migration is still there. And if you need to upgrade, if you're thinking about an operating system move from 2008 R2 to 2012, then obviously that makes sense to do that as part of the upgrade process. It means that your platform's going to be supported for longer, and you're not going to need to worry about your operating system going out of support before the application does. So there's things like that we need to consider, but there's certainly some options around that. You should obviously plan if you need to take some downtime for the platform. So telephony is one of those things where people just expect it to be on all the time. And so, if you're running your telephony platform through Link 2013 at the moment, users generally would expect their telephony to be working all of the time as well, which is a fairly normal thing. And so if you're looking to do an upgrade, we need to consider how we're going to do that upgrade whilst maintaining the telephony service to our users. So we've got some options around that. We can do that if needs be, and that all needs to be built into the plan to upgrade the platform. So, you might need to plan for some downtime, or you need to plan for not having any downtime. It's got to be one or the other. Then with regards to sort of prerequisites, so the hardware requirements essentially are the same for Link 2013 and for Skype for Business as well, so they haven't really changed. That's why we're able to do the in-place upgrade, really. Obviously, we've got minimum requirements in terms of in terms of doing an in-place upgrade. We need to make sure we're up to the latest cumulative update, sort of CU5 as a minimum. SQL Express, that gets updated as part of the in-place upgrade. So there's not too much of a worry there. So that just happens as part of the in-place upgrade if you're using SQL Express on any of the Link servers. Then we reckon, so one of the things about an in-place upgrade is that when you're doing the upgrade itself, you need to do it from a workstation or a server that's never had any of the other either Link installations or admin tools or anything like that on it. It needs to be a nice clean machine that you can work from, that you can then install the Skype for Business admin tools and then do the upgrade from there. That's a critical part of the upgrade path. It's a minor thing, I suppose, because it's reasonably easy to spin up a new VM. if you've got a virtualization platform, but it's certainly it's a critical part of the upgrade. And then backups, making sure that your environment's completely backed up before you start the upgrade process, obviously is important. It's just part of the due diligence work. And then if you've got things like pool pairing or anything like that configured in your environment at the moment, then we need to make sure that that's disabled before the upgrade. And there's various considerations around. If you've got multiple front-end server pools, then we need to make sure that all of the front-end servers are all upgraded before we restart all the services on the pool. And so you've got to plan for your pool being completely down as part of the upgrade process, even as an in-place upgrade. The services need to be stopped so that we can do the upgrade. And that's where we need to consider, if you're not going to have downtime, you need to move those users off to another pool whilst you perform the upgrade of your first pool. So there's lots of considerations around upgrade options, and there's lots of reasons for and against for doing lots of different ways. And that's where the planning and the consideration of your existing environment and what users are going to be expecting as part of the service that they're currently receiving, that all needs to be taken into consideration before you then start your upgrade process. So telephony in particular obviously is a critical service, and it's one that's you've got to plan very carefully and make sure you've done all of your due diligence before you start the upgrade process. It's not a trivial thing to do this. It's something that needs to be carefully planned.
And I guess that kind of brings us on to the next slide, is how can we help here at Visual for any customers that are looking to do that. And I think you kind of touched on that really there, is that's the key, is we just need to plan.
Yeah, there is the in-place functionality, but consideration still needs to take place around migration, upgrades.
And I think it's always been Microsoft's methodology as well, right? Is you plan, you do a bit more planning, and then you plan a bit more, and then before you're ready to go, you do a bit more planning before you're ready to go, and then you do it, and then you plan it afterwards as well. So there's basically lots of planning, which is where we can come in and help. We've also got some key relationships with a number of best-of-breed providers. So we've got Gamma, who we partnership with for providing SIP trunking. So anybody that's still got ISDN lines or traditional old telephony lines, if you like, there's things we can do there to help modernise those lines and make it far easier to migrate from one platform to another. We've got a number of contact centre relationships as well, and that's also developing. So anybody that's
that's going to be one of those areas that's really, we're seeing growth there anyway. When we start looking at the integration of, Skype for Business and the Skype platform, providing those kinds of contact center. We say contact center, not call center, all right? Because contacts could be instant messages, could be emails, that sort of thing. But that contact center functionality from your website directly into your users, then we're seeing huge growth in those areas, and that kind of functionality is the kind of things that organisations are just expecting now.
I think consumers are expecting it, aren't they? Like you say,
yeah, absolutely.
So there was some very poignant conversations I was having with a customer that these days, within 5 minutes, somebody can, if they've had a bad experience trying to call a provider of some services, for example, and they've had a bad experience trying to get through to them on the phone, within 5 or 10 minutes on a Twitter feed or Facebook or whatever these days, people can make comments, and then your reputation for that particular business just goes through the floor, just by not being able to be a bit more dynamic in the way that consumers can actually talk to that particular business. So opening up and providing contact centres are different ways of the consumers being able to talk to somebody within the business that can help them out is key moving forward, I think, in the future, in the next couple of years. So just finishing off, we've got obviously some device endpoint providers as well that we partnership with, so Polycom, Jabra, Sennheiser, Plantronics. And of course, for those of you who aren't already aware, we're a gold partner in a number of different key competencies, clearly communications and messaging being what we're focusing on here, but a number of other
competencies. Yeah.
Competencies, thank you.
So now we're a little bit over time here, but it's been a really rich conversation here. Obviously, just being careful that there's obviously some things that we probably know in the background around NDA, and we've been careful to dance around those a little bit. But I hope that really gives you an insight to our focus on making this a success for our customers, and hopefully giving us the opportunity to help you and a little bit of an insight what's coming down the way. Just really want to highlight to you that we have got some other events coming up around this topic. We've got a seminar face-to-face event in our Stafford offices on the 22nd of April, so please look out for the invite for that. So you'll have the opportunity to hear from some of the people in this room, some customers, and get an insight from Microsoft around the platform. One of the things that we'll be doing probably post that event when everything is released is maybe doing what we call a knowledge share workshop, which is essentially bringing together maybe about a dozen or so customers in a room, having a consultant or a couple of consultants in the room, and basically whiteboarding out the solution for you, talking to you about what can be done, how it can be done, kind of things that you'll be looked to implement, some of the blockers that may be apparent. So again, please look out for that. For anybody that's interested in a little bit more about Link and Link Voice and Skype for Business, then we do have a pre-sales engagement, a defined pre-sales engagement from people in Ian's team, which is a half-day, what we call business value assessment, that uses some of the tools that Microsoft got online to help you to determine a way ahead. If you just want to get on with it, then obviously we have a very Microsoft Operations Framework, ITIL framework approach for delivering projects, so we can help you with deployment services, design and planning, test and build, training, support, all of those things. And then lastly, I don't know if everybody's aware, but there is something called Fast Track from Microsoft. If you are making a commitment to some of the Office 365 SKUs, particularly E4 or E3, there are some Fast Track funding schemes that we can help you get access to there to help with those deployments based on that commitment you make to the Office 365 platform. So without further ado, I know we're over time. I wanted to thank everyone for their time today listening in. It's been a great conversation. Please do give us a feedback on today's content, the way that it flowed. These kind of podcast type things are a little bit new for us rather than just doing a classic webcast. We'd like to do more of them. Please, as I say, look out for the events that we've got in the future. I know we're over time, but I'll be happy to have a look, just see if we've got any questions here that we might want to answer, or if there's anything that anybody else wants to put into the Q&A feed at the moment. We'll answer those now.
I was going to say what we'll do is we'll probably pause the recording and say thank you to everybody, but we'll probably stay on the webcast and probably for another 20 minutes, half an hour or so, just answering questions over the Q&A. So please feel free to hang around and ask those questions.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.